Good afternoon. I'm Rachael Rakes, the Artistic Director for the 12th Mediacity Biennale. This, too, is a map. This is the first event of our official opening for SMB12, and the first of several days of events, talks, and parties taking place in various locations to celebrate the contributions of this edition's artists and practitioners. This roundtable is intended as a casual introduction to a few of the artists' practice in the show. Each will speak in turn for a few minutes about their work and its contexts. We'll follow that with a casual discussion with the artist and with you. The first panel, HERES as Elsewheres, showcases artists from several regions who work in sound, installation, textile, sculpture, painting, performance, and video. Each of the practices is geared toward different topics and applications of non-territorial mapping. Their work touches on topics ranging from human and earthly migrations, diasporas, intergenerational imprints, and various concepts of ecologies. The participating artists on this panel are Wang, Guido Yannitto, Hyunsun Jeon, Ikkibawi쿠르르, Jaye, Rhee, Chun, Mercedes Azpilicueta, Soyoung, Chung, and that's it. And they're going to join me on the stage now. And while they do that, I encourage you to feel free to move up. You don't have to crowd back there. Even though there's cameras here, you can feel free to use these as seating areas and be comfortable.
Yeah, thank you, Rachael. Thanks to everyone who make it here this afternoon. I'm very happy to be part of the Biennale. So I guess I will start with introducing my work in this Biennale, and also some context. When you walk up, you probably see this bright light installation on the third floor and close to the bookstore. That's one of my work in the Biennale called The Fountain of Interior. This work was initially commissioned by Singapore Art Museum last year for an exhibition that focused on the politics of infrastructure in the context of Southeast Asia. So I did an art residency back in 2016 in Singapore, during which I got a very interest in the topic of infrastructure and how the rhetorics of progress and also the rhetorics of violence, that what we can do, what we can read into through infrastructures. So one thing I was very interested in while in Singapore was the politics of lighting, and because I was looking at the way how migrant workers in Singapore was treated and how basically this sort of lighting, this kind of color used in migrant workers' dormitory has been coded with a certain kind of logic of power behind. So in this work, the formalistic reference was taken from the waterfall in Singapore Changi Airport. So Changi Airport has a huge showcase of a waterfall, artificial waterfall, and dropping from the floor, the ceiling to the ground in an air-conditioned environment. So for me, this sort of this idea of artificial built, human-built environment, in contrast with how the migrant workers were treated, were two sides of the same kind of rhetorics of progress and modernization in the world we live in today. And the other work I'm also presenting is in the Sokong market in the underground, like maybe 5 minutes walk from here. It's a 2-channel video installation called The Revolution Will Not Be Air Conditioned, which came out of lots of research I conducted through my previous project, focused on the spatial politics of Hong Kong, and particularly with an interest in focus on the commercial space, shopping space, which I read as a kind of space that has its historical roots in the colonial gardens, and but by following the transformation of the structure, especially looking at how the protest in Hong Kong in 2019 has happened, I was also trying to understand what kind of political potential this kind of space can produce. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Guido Yannitto. I'm from Argentina. Thank you, Rachael and Sophia, for having me here, for inviting me. I'm very happy to be here. It's my first time in Korea. Well, I'm presenting 3 textiles that are in the first floor, and those are part, 2 of them were part of my latest show, my solo show in Salta. That's where I come from. It's in the north of Argentina. I'm based there. That is in the border with Bolivia and Chile. And the works are called Water Grammar, and it's an investigation about geometrical patterns in textiles, in South American textiles that represent water. I work with textiles for almost 20 years. I started in Salta, that is a place with a huge tradition in textile. I came back, I lived in Buenos Aires, and then moved around. I lived in Mexico, in Colombia, in the Netherlands. But after the pandemic, I came back to Salta to live, and it was like a huge movement for me personally and professionally. But it was a good decision because there I could expand my work and work with other weavers, because I work with weavers and I work with these relations and relation with weavers and aspects as communication and oral transmission also. And now I am working also with a group of indigenous women, how do you say acompañando? Accompany creative process and trying to put the production in the artwork also. And doing that with a curator from there called Andrei Fernandez. Well, we did some exhibitions and tried to explain what is art also to this community, and that it's also that's also a question for me, what is art, no? And well, after that also I opened a gallery in Salta with my partner, and yeah, trying to also expand the art context of the region. And what else? So my practice, what I wanted to say is that my practice is more than making textiles. Also, textiles is like an axis for me where I can move and think about relation, communication, or transmissions of knowledge, and from then try to think about these local identities and how they are related with global and identities also. So I think that's all. Yeah.
Thanks, Guido.
Hello, my name is Mercedes Azpilicueta. I also am an artist also from Argentina, like Guido. And Agustina, she's not here, but later, in the next round. I live in the Netherlands. I'm presenting my work on the 3rd floor of the museum. There are two works. There's a already existing work, which is based, it's a jacquard tapestry based on the life of Catalina de Rauso. I usually work with a lot of historical references or stories that allow me to be retold. And in this particular case, it's a woman in the 1600s in the north of Spain, what is considered the Basque country, which part of my family also come from there. And she became a man in the 1600s, and she fought for the Spanish crown. So she dressed as a man, and then she traveled to America and became a very deadly conquistador. It's a very controversial character. I never knew how to relate to her, him, because of course the story is interesting, but she and he represented everything that we struggle with in Argentina and in South America and in America overall as ex-colonies. And in this tapestry, you can see through a collage a composition of different historical images, engravings in different battles that Erauso participated, paintings and depictions of Erauso, also plants that were exchanged in between Spain and South America. Yes, and it's this way of re-narrating stories. It's something that I usually engage with, and this was a previous work I did for another exhibition a couple of years ago. And next to that, on the same room, there is a group of 5 textile pieces. I usually work with different mediums. So in this case, in the room, there are textiles, sound work, and we will also have a performance on Saturday at 3 in the afternoon around these works with the singer Seung-hee Lee. It's a Pansori singer, so everyone is invited. But there are different mediums that I usually work with. As I said, performance, language-based works, text, textile, video. Yeah, it can be pretty much anything, I guess. Sculptures also. And in the room, the works that I did and that it was commissioned by the Biennale, it's a research of the Korean diaspora and community in Argentina, that they arrived, there's a big community, Korean community in Argentina. They arrived in the 60s and 70s. And they introduced what the textile industry is today. So before the war, the textile production was very advanced here in Korea. And then when they moved to Argentina, a lot of these families, they come with their machines, hand knitting machines, like the Galga one, for example. And then they start working and knitting in their homes as a family. So I interviewed different women that they can recall their grandparents and parents working in their home. They would all work, for example, grandparents and parents would knit, and the children would play on the studio. And that's something that it continues today. So there are different neighborhoods, different areas, and nowadays it's a huge industry, and it's for inside Argentina, but also bordering countries that they export. And it's and so what I did for the Biennale was to get some of these garments. And some of these garments are also made with fabric from Korea. So it's Korean fabric that goes to Argentina, and then it gets made into retail clothes. And then I am based in the Netherlands. So those were brought into Amsterdam, where I have my studio. And then through different other pieces of fabrics, I wanted to use scraps of fabrics and these particular shirts and garments that I got from Argentina. I worked on these quilts that you can see hanging, and they have these quilting techniques and also patching techniques, a bit inspired in the Korean wrapping cloth. I think the rojaki, if I pronounce well, but yeah, correct me. And it was a laborious process, not only made on my own. I work with a wonderful team, so I want to thank Antonia Frattini in Buenos Aires, with whom I made the research with, and with whom we interview these different testimonies. And also in Amsterdam, I worked with Mika Perlmutter, Darsha Golova, and Karen Wang. And the 4 of us, we worked on these big 5 pieces that you see in the space. And then there is a soundscape that takes part of the, like, certain words from these testimonies and interviews, and that it's made in collaboration with Tony Brel, a sound maker, an artist also based in the Netherlands. So I think, yeah, and Ageliki Totsakaki I also would like to mention, which she's my close collaborator in the studio. So this is briefly the description of the work.
Thanks, Mercedes. Hyunsun?
네, 안녕하세요. 저는 전현선입니다. 저는 페인팅을 하고 있고 이번 전시에서는 서소문본관 1층에 회화 작업 그리고 을지로 지하에 있는 스페이스 MM에서 그 벽화를 그렸습니다. 이 본관에 있는 작업은 회화 15점을 연결해서 하나의 화면을 만든 작업인데요. 관람자를 둥글게 감싸는 설치로 되어 있고 이 그림들이 한 번에 모였을 때 만들어지는 수직 수평에 여러 모서리가 생긴다는 상상을 하면서 작업을 했습니다. 근데 온전했던 형태가 흩어진 화면, 그리고 앞뒤의 거리감이나 공간감이 없어진 화면, 그리고 퍼즐처럼 뒤섞인 화면을 상상을 했습니다. 근데 어떤 하나의 이미지를 미리 정해놓고 그것을 해체한다기보다는 반복이나 확장이나 변형을 통해서 원래부터 흩어져 있던 이미지들을 오히려 반대로 정리하듯이 꾸려 나갔습니다. 그리고 지하에 있는 벽화 작업은 그 사람들이 계속 끊임없이 지나다니는 통로 옆에 설치되어서 그런 사람들의 움직임에 따라서 약간 길게 늘어진 형태를 상상했습니다. 그래서 벽화 그리고 라인 드로잉, 그 바닥에 카페트로 이루어져 있는데요. 들어가서 긴 벽에는 나무를 어떤 단위로 하는 시간이 반복되는 숲을 그렸고 바닥에는 이제 단순한 픽셀 형태의 도형들을 징검다리처럼 놓아두었습니다. 그리고 들어가서 보이는 정면에는 원기둥들을 그렸는데 뉘앙스나 분위기는 있지만 내용은 없는 어떤 장면을 상상했습니다. 그래서 관람객이 들어가서 징검다리를 건너면서 시간이 되풀이되는 숲을 지나서 약간 대사가 없는 대화를 나누게 되는 그런 경험이 되었으면 합니다. 네.
Hi, my name is Jaye Rhee. So I'm presenting a performance piece, Arizona Cowboy, as part of Far West So Close. It's because when I said as part of Far West So Close, actually it is the large piece that consists of a performance element, home video, documentary videos, and films, and many other mediums. And I planned this piece even before pandemic, and I had a meeting with a couple organizations in Arizona to do this performance and shoot some part of the films. But then, due to pandemic, many organizations and many art projects has been postponed, and many organizations closed, and they closed even for good, right? And so I didn't know what to do with that, but I had these ideas. I had this, so I spent so many times just writing the proposals without realizing it. And if you're an artist, you know this feeling. You can make the work, but you just have to write it and just think about it, right? And I met Rachael before the Mediacity Biennale, right? And then I told her about this project, so I'm going to, so I had planned to go to this Arizona to do this piece, and then blah, blah. And she said, wow, can you do this performance element in Seoul? We said, oh yeah, maybe we can do it with the expats of foreign expats in Seoul. And then it was just we started very in very cute scale, yeah, because let's just gather some foreigners in Seoul and make this performance. So we just, okay, so I'll just do it. But then the whole process was just making like new work. It's like you're putting you don't put smaller energy or smaller efforts because you're making just a part of the work or the small work. You are putting same energy, same efforts. It's just making the big work. So I contacted people of all my contact in my phone, and I said, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this project." Same things again. So I, like do you know any foreigners or like music students? And then I found there are some music actually, because the K-pop is popular these days, and also like the Korean people are known for classical music, right? And so there are some people who come to South Korea to study music in part-time. And so I contact these people, like schools in Hanejong, or like any other schools with music department, and we found some performers, or some participants who's enthusiastic to do this piece. And we practiced several months over the Zoom, because I was not here. And then before that we had this process of arranging the song, because I didn't want to have these people to sing the same song. Although it's the same song, same Arizona Cowboy song. Maybe I didn't explain about this song. Yeah, I didn't explain about that song. Okay, so this Arizona Cowboy, it's a song that came out 1958 or so, after Korean War, and it is known to be the first K-pop that is influenced by Western pop music. And the lyrics of this song, it's really, the lyrics of the song is like this. Arizona Cowboy, Arizona Cowboy, Arizona Cowboy, 말굽소리 휘날리며 Arizona Cowboy, Arizona Cowboy, 인디안의 뿔피리 소리, 말 달리는 카우보이, 노을 지는 하늘에 조각 다른 외로워, 초록포, I don't even know what 초록포장 is there, but then, and it was just, it doesn't describe much. Then I thought, is it landscape of certain things, like landscape of Arizona? No, it's like, so they put few words from cliches of spaghetti western, and then they put their aspiration onto it. So here the Arizona represents like home, home that has been lost due to war or something. So, and there's this part, 주막, something, 여인이 우리를 기다리는 주막에 주막이 있다. Something that we have to go to this pub there. That's where the lady is waiting for us or something. So this song doesn't have much logics, but it just shows the inner scape of collective people who sing this song back in 1950 something, right? Yeah. My first idea was that I go to like places like Arizona, New Mexico, and it's a big place, so like different cities in Arizona, different cities in New Mexico, different cities in Colorado, all these like a kind of quote-unquote Wild West, and meet communities there and have them sing this song. It's just one element of the work. And so there's like a Pacific Islanders, like Native Americans, you know, like Irish Americans, Asian Americans, Korean Americans. I meet them and have them sing this song, and they explore the idea of the Arizona. So we gathered these foreigners living in Seoul who can sing better than average, right? And they're going to be professional at some point. And have them sing this song. When I arranged the song, I have my musician composer to make it as if the beginning stays like the original song, but then it becomes more like a chant, chant or those songs that Jewish people might sing in the Yom Kippur. It's because the Arizona is not the place. Arizona is not that's Arizona somewhere in the west of the United States. Arizona is some place that we cannot even go. It doesn't even exist. Maybe it does, but then nobody knows. So I want this song to be as the song processes, in the end, I want this to be like a chant or chant. Yeah. And the performance will held at the third floor exhibition space today, 350 and 5.
And 5,
right? 350 and 5.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you. Jessie?
Hi, 안녕하세요. My name is Jessie Chun. For the biennial, I am presenting a solo survey exhibition at the Seoul Museum of History. Thank you, Rachael and Sophia, for this invitation. This exhibition features my previous and also recent works that were commissioned for the biennial. And my work draws from my own diasporic relationship to language. And it's an exploration of language, historiography, and translation. I worked across various media, including moving image, drawing, installation, and sculpture. And I've been really interested in thinking about language's relationship to power, its hierarchies, politics, and how I may, possibly translate these structures through abstraction, rupture, and creating my own sort of poetics and language through that space. And for the show, for the biennial, I've been working in Seoul for the last few months. And I've been doing various researches from my own family's archives. During the last few months here, I found a whole book of letters that my grandmother left me, which my family didn't know that it existed because she passed away in 2017. And while I was working on various works here, I felt really I just had a feeling that she left me something. And then I kept bugging my parents, and then we found this notebook she left me, and it was actually addressed to me. And so it was crazy to find it. And so I also made some sculptures in the show where I'm kind of responding to her writing through sculptural assemblage. And I thought about a way to kind of speak together with her across time and place. And I also am showing a lot of different short films and moving image poems which take a lot of spatial elements. My video works take on a lot of, they're really interested in thinking about language as like an embodied experience, and can it be experienced in a way where it's not just written or spoken, but really like physically navigated through. So you'll see that in the show. And Oh Dust is my most recent short film, which I filmed last year in Paris at the UNESCO headquarters. Totally unofficial and like not legit at all, like using my iPhone, and no one like there commissioned me to do this. Like I just went in there as like a shady, like, you know, like spy. And basically the archivist there helped me, and she was watching me film the whole thing. But I was interested in going there because UNESCO is, as you all know, is like the world's heritage site. And I mean, they decide and institutionalize what is considered the world's heritage. And so I was interested in going there to kind of unpack what happens behind the scenes. Like, how do you archive something intangible like memory or culture or heritage? And then also looking at the politics of translation, because the whole world has to translate themselves in English or French only. And so I went there, and then I also wanted to make a very unofficial speech from a very official place. So I made a very sort of like poetic film that's dedicated to my late grandmother. So that film is also installed in a 3-channel installation paired with mirrors. And yeah, so I hope you get to see the show.
Thank you.
네, 안녕하세요. 저는 정소영입니다. 저는 여기 1층에 그 섬 그리기라는 영상 작업 설치와 29.5일이라는 조각 설치 작업을 보여드리고 있습니다. 저는 주로 자연의 시간과 인간의 시간이 어떻게 만났다가 어긋나는지 그런 관계 속에서 벌어지는 이야기들에 주로 관심을 갖고 작업을 하고 있는데요. 여기서 보여드리는 작업은 제가 2018년도부터 시작한 바다에 관한 작업의 일부를 보여드리고 있습니다. 제가 2018년도에 그 제주도 밑에 있는 작은 섬 가파도에서 체류를 하게 되면서 바다의 영역은 바다의 영역은 이렇게 거대하고 광활한데 우리 인간이 거기서 예를 들어서 양식장을 만들고 바다에 나가서 어망을 치고, 그리고 또 지정학적으로는 바다의 수많은 경계들을 어떻게 만들어 나가고 있는지 그런 부분에 대해서 관심을 갖게 되었습니다. 섬 그리기라는 영상은 보시면 배가 하얀색 밧줄을 늘어뜨리고 이렇게 바다 위를 한 바퀴 돌고 나가는 한신로 만들어진 영상인데요. 그 작업은 제가 2018년도에 가파도에서 지내면서 알게 된 선장님과 대화 중에 이제 나온 아이디어였습니다. 그 밧줄이 바다의 어떤 영역을 표시를 하거나 배를 붙잡기 바다로부터 떠내려가지 않도록 쓰는 어떤 굉장히 기본적인 도구인데 그게 물에 뜬다라는 사실을 알게 되었고요. 그리고 또 제주도 쪽에 그 남부 해역에 이어도라는 섬이 있는데 그 한국 그 바다 신화 속에 이어도라는 섬이 어떻게 보면은 삶과 죽음의 경계에 있는 유토피아 같다라는 그런 신화에 대해서도 알게 되었고, 신화 속에 있는 섬이라고 알고 있었던 이어도가 사실 또 어떤 암초의 이어도 해양기지국을 이제 한국 정부에서 만들어서 일본과 한국 사이에 있는 배타적 수역 경계에서의 어떤 분쟁 갈등에서 또 이기기 위한 하나의 또 지역으로 이어도라고 이제 있다라는 것도 알게 되었습니다. 그래서 이렇게 바다라는 그 잡을 수 없는 그런 장소에 어떻게 우리가 섬을 만들어내고 살아가는지 그 섬을 제가 바다 위에 그려보면 어떨까 하면서 이제 배로 잠시나마 그림을 그려보면서 영역을 표시해보는 그런 작업을 했습니다. 29.5일이라는 작업은 뒤쪽에 조각 설치인데요. 이후에 그 바다와 육지의 영역을 어떻게 구분할 수 있는가, 그것은 굉장히 모호한 지점이라고 생각을 하면서 한 작업인데요. 29.5일이라는 말이 사실 우리가 인간이 생각하는 그 30일과 31일에서 또 적은 숫자라 약간 어색할 수도 있는데, 그거는 달의 자전의 그 주기라고 합니다. 그래서 달의 주기를 바로 우리가 그 육지에서 느낄 수 있는 것이 사실 그 만조와 간조의 시간이고요. 그래서 거기 29.5일 조각 작업은 제가 그 서해안 바닷가에서 갯벌이 품고 있는 물의 흔적, 그리고 근데 물이 다시 들어왔을 때 그곳은 다시 흙인지 물인지 모르겠는 그런 어떤 그 아까 전에 말씀드린 자연과 인간의 어긋나는 그 시간들을 제가 조각 작업으로 설치한 작업입니다.
안녕하세요. 저는 이끼바위쿠르르의 조지은이라고 하고요. 저희 작업을 설명하자면, 여기 그 미술관 앞마당에 흙으로 쌓아 올려진 이렇게 그 네모 모양의 여러 그 조형물을 보실 수 있는데요. 그것들은 이제 전통적으로 사실 땅 다짐이라는 땅을 다진다라고 하는 거는 전통적으로 집을 지을 때 땅을 먼저 다진 다음에 이제 시작을 하거든요. 그래서 그걸 그대로 땅을 다지면서 쌓아 올린 일종의 탑이에요. 근데 이제 저희가 그거를 만들면서 사실은 절에 있는 탑도 사실 생각을 했었고요. 왜냐면 뭔가를 자꾸 빌게 되더라고요. 그 땅을 다지면서. 근데 이제 뭐 여러 가지 의미가 있긴 하지만, 한국의 서울이라는 게 부동산 게임이 엄청나잖아요. 근데 이제 저희는 그 부동산 게임에 진 사람들이라고 생각했어요. 저희 스스로가. 이제 앞으로도 별로 이길 가능성이 별로 없어 보이기도 하고, 그다음에 이제 또 하나는 저희가 그 작업을 하게 된 연유 중에 마석가구 단지라는 지역이 있거든요. 근데 거기 이주 노동자들이 굉장히 많이 살아요. 근데 거기가 이제 재개발이 시작됐어요. 항상 할 거다 말만 있었는데 이제 시작이 됐고, 지금 이제 한 3분의 1 정도는 그 사람들이 거기를 떠나가는 상황이 됐는데, 이 이주 노동자들한테 재개발이라고 하는 건 한국 사람들하고 또 다른 의미가 있을 거라고 생각하거든요. 근데 이제 그분들은, 저도 부동산 게임에 졌지만 그분들은 게임조차 할 수 없는 사람들이잖아요. 그래서 이제 그런 이야기들을 내포하고 있고, 또 하나 재밌는 거는 사실 흙이라고 하는 게 나무와 땅을 연결시켜주는 매개체이기도 하고, 그게 어떻게 보면 공동체끼리의 연결 같은 걸 해주는 중간적인 지점들을 가지고 있다고 생각하거든요. 근데 저희가 이 미술관에 그 땅을 옮겨오면서 저희의 친구들이 같이 협업을 해줬었어요. 땅을 다질 때 저희 3명으로는 부족하니까. 그래서 같이 땅을 다지면서 저희끼리 뭔가 연결된 어떤 느낌 같은 걸 받았거든요. 같이 뭔가 이렇게 노동을 같이 하면서 뭔가 우정이 생긴 것 같기도 하고, 그래서 같이 일했던 어떤 과정들에 대해서 계속 얘기를 하게 됐어요, 서로. 그리고 그런 느낌들이 저희가 저 작업을 하면서 바랬던 게 아닐까라고 거꾸로 생각하게 됐거든요. 그러니까 저희가 물론 이 땅 작업뿐만 아니라 다른 걸 할 때도 공동체에 관련돼서 굉장히 관심이 많고, 그것들이 어떻게 한국 사회에서 회복될 수 있을까 이런 생각하는데, 사실은 부동산이라고 하는 것도 개인의 성장을 통해서 획득할 수 있는 거라면, 우리가 그 공동체성을 잊어버린 이유들이 이 부동산을 통해서 사실은 나타나잖아요. 근데 저희가 오히려 땅을 다지면서 약간의 그 친구들과의 우정들을 느끼면서 연결된 느낌을 받았다라는 게 되게 소중하게 사실은 좀 느껴져서, 작업하는 과정 중에 그런 이야기들이 훨씬 좀 마음속에 와닿았던 것 같아요. 그리고 예를 들어서 이제 저희가 그 작업을 하면서 벌레들이 엄청 많이 꼬이기 시작했거든요, 그 주변에. 그리고 가끔 고양이도 그 위에서 놀기도 하고, 그래서 저희가 예상치는 않았지만 뭔가 다른 세계가 미술관 앞마당에서 약간 펼쳐진 것 같아서, 그런 점들도 사실은 오히려 작업을 하면서 훨씬 더 이렇게 스스로한테도 인상적이었고 그 관객들한테도 그런 이야기들이 좀 전달됐으면 좋겠다는 생각들을 했어요. 그리고 그 아까 이제 뭔가 비는 마음이 있다고 했잖아요. 그 땅을 다지면서. 그래서 그 지금 이렇게 빌딩이 많은 이런 도시 안에 뭔가 그거와 반대급부인 일종의 건물 모양의 땅탑을 지은 것이 뭔가 대조적인 어떤 느낌도 들고 뭔가 작은 저항 같기도 하고 그런 마음으로 작업을 했습니다. 네.
So, picking up from Ikkibawi쿠르르's your move of quite literal displacement of these soil and roots and rocks and insects, it turns out, and taking that from Masok and these ex-factory complexes and placing it directly into City Hall and Sema. I wanted to take off from there and ask a question for all of you or many of you, whoever would like to chime in, to talk about the role of displacement and replacement in your works, whether that be visual, aesthetic, physical, etc. Jaye talked about an Arizona that isn't in Arizona. So where does that exist? Mercedes talked about this back and forth of these garments in different forms and the people who make them. And so maybe just want to start off by asking any of you to chime in on this idea of displacement and replacement.
Hello. I'll start just to break the ice. But I think that question is at the core of this Biennale and exhibition, and it kind of replicates in every installation and work. And what I feel, at least with the type of materiality that I have been working with, in this case, textiles that maybe leave Korea, arrive in Argentina, they are made, assembled, then they are brought into the Netherlands, then they are deconstructed. I would say it's beyond the object or the materials in itself, as I think I read in one of the texts of the rooms, I think on the ground floor, that it's not about materials or the material as a media in a way. And I think that for me as well, the idea of having these objects and these tangible objects, textiles, it was an opportunity to encounter different voices, different narratives that I would have not arrived to otherwise. And that's irreplaceable, I think, like how I encountered those relationships, those narratives, those voices, I would say. And then the materials became kind of the channels that took me there. I don't know if this is really answering the question, but maybe opening up.
Following Mercedes, and because I feel like also for me in the common interest in two of the work I present here in the Biennale is also this focus on the deteriorization of the world, or the interiorization of the world, which is the title of one of the work, The Fountain of Interiors. Because when we're thinking about infrastructure, thinking about also shopping mall as well, what's happening was this sort of erasure of physical space, of the climate, of the environment, but also a kind of transformation of space and distance and time throughout these kind of spatial devices. So, I mean, it's almost become a cliche to talking about the idea of non-place, which, if you're not familiar with this concept, non-place refers to this kind of transitional space, shopping malls, and airports, sub and train stations, where it's increasingly become homogeneous across the world. and when you enter one of the spaces, you feel you are automatically connected with another one. I think for me, the tension in both of the work is really looking at the way how, because the kind of interiorization of the world is a way to create an artificial space that human being, society, but also capitalist growth can be immune from the fluctuation, the contingency of nature, which give the promise of progress. But on the other side, once we're looking at the how this kind of practice, this kind of spatial practice, this kind of construction of shopping malls can also reconfigure human society. And I think for me, that is this kind of politics of space that I'm interested in.
Just to kind of go off of what Bo shared about interiority, I think for me, what I've been thinking about in terms of like displacement and replacement is actually thinking about the sort of like interiority of language. And for me, I was born in Korea. I lived here as a child, and I moved to a bunch of other countries. But I think part of being a diasporic person is you lose contact or touch with some of the things that you like. Like for instance, like Korean folklore, Korean folk literature is something that I began kind of referencing in my work naturally over the years, but it's something that I also feel disconnected from. And so it's something that I kind of reimagined. So I think everything that comes out when I reinterpret things that are from my heritage or from different pockets of like places that I'm from, and it becomes like a mutation of language. And so I think that sort of replacement, which actually is a mutation, has been interesting for me to bring back to Korea, where like everyone's familiar with these like folk literature references that I'm making, but then my version of it is not really, the authentic kind. And so I'm really interested in how that kind of recontextualization or just reimagination can resonate or take place.
Okay, so I just wanted to add a little bit about this mutation, the idea of mutation. It's because when I worked with this performance piece, while working with these foreigners living in South Korea, although they speak very good Korean, learning the song without logic in lyrics, was difficult. Because there are some parts of pronunciation, and maybe it doesn't make sense, and when you have to memorize something, you need to follow your own logic, but this song doesn't have that. But while we're practicing and practicing and practicing, I felt like I felt this. Maybe this whole word is wrong. This word, this place, or Arizona, or the Seoul, or wherever, or your language, the language that you think it is mother language or the second language. Maybe these are all mistakenly envisioned thing or wrongly drawn things. But while making work, and then when I had this moment, maybe I'm a little too emotional about my work, but then there's this moment for me, although it's a utopia that doesn't exist, and it's mistakenly, wrongly envisioned place. The work of these people, like artwork, sometimes shows the process or as a result. Momentarily shows this very briefly beautiful moment that's almost maybe it is utopia. I think that's what I think about this art making and displacement and all.
Anybody else, or I can move to the next question? Okay. So I guess you're ready for me to ask you about territorialization and borders and mapping. So this is what we're going to do now. Thinking particularly, for instance, in Guido and Hyunsun's work about these the borders of what is the so-called abstract and the real. What are the borders of representation of a landscape or a memory in Hyunsun's work, and these sort of acts of referentiality. And then, of course, also, Soyoung, you mentioned this this contentious area in drawing an island that is sort of between or among Korea and China, and yet it's the sea. And so, in many of your works, you have these tricky engagements with the idea of borderedness or territoriality. So, for any of you who'd like to talk about that, also ikkibawiKrrr as well.
Yes, when I was invited to show my work here with this title, "This to a Map," like I felt so connected, and I'm really happy to see every work presented here. Well, it's like I'm still processing it, and there's a lot to learn. So I start to see everything as a map now. Of course, in my work, I'm dealing a lot with that subject, but I never deliberately use the word map in my work, for my work, because map has this kind of system that is imposed to us, and that we are all living within it, and we are constantly remaking them as well. And in my research, I think, especially with this work, drawing on island, I just realized, because I made this work, but I'm rewatching it over and over, and I don't know if you have realized that this circle that the rope is making is never closed, but but people leave the space thinking that I saw a circle. So actually mapping is like a system, but also an imagination that we constantly make in our mind. And but what I did for this work was just making some sort of movement with very light material on the surface of the sea, which is, if you want, you can reach it at any time. So, but with these simple elements, even trying to make a full circle was impossible. So within the nature, there is, of course, this very much of order, trying to make an order, like mapping, but also deconstructing it at the same time. So I guess this is one of the strongest keywords that you brought, and I'm trying to make a more closer connection to the work by saying it. Yes.
No. Yes. I was thinking about displacement also and mapping, and in my research, I think what I've been doing in these two years was to. What I realized I was doing is to connect with weavers all over the region and doing a mapping also of that, and connect those people with their habit, with the landscapes or with the places. And with the stories of these places also, and with the myth, local myths also. And for me, abstraction is like an excuse also to present this and to start a dialogue with these persons with these people, and also what you were saying about mapping, that is a construction. For me, also it's a construction, but I think about intuition also in this mapping on how you move in these territories, no, and which are the things that move from one place to another. That is not a very, maybe it's not very logical. It has to be different elements that for you make sense to connect this, like this technique with this person, with this landscape. And for example, the work that I made here that is called water grammar is because I went to this place that is a town of weavers, and there was this lake that is really hidden, and you don't know where the water comes from. There's different myths and explanations of where the water comes from. Of course, there's a scientific explanation, but people there stays with these myths, no? And I went there because I was the museum in Buenos Aires commissioned a work, and I proposed this work to work in this place with this weaver. And I went to the lagoon, to the lake, to see the color of the lake. I was wondering about the color, no? That was the intuition, and that it started to bring like a lot of stories. And I meet this person, and I meet this weaver that was living in Buenos Aires, but he was from there like 1,000 kilometers, and that's displacement things also, no? Like how we can meet in different cities or towns, and it's something that have it's not very logical, but in some ways it happens and it makes sense, no?
저도 다른 작가님처럼 이번 비엔날레를 준비하면서 계속 모든 것을 이렇게 지도로 보기 시작했는데요. 저는 대부분의 회화가 지도 만들기, 지도 그리기, 그리고 경계를 만들거나 또 허물기의 그런 행위를 한다고 생각을 합니다. 그리고 저는 주로 이제 여러 개의 캔버스를 모아서 하나의 화면으로 만드는 그런 방식을 요즘 쓰고 있는데요. 그때 제가 그린 이미지들을 나누는 것은 이제 캔버스 틀이 아니라 그 안에서 약간 그물을 치듯이 되게 다양한 크기의 영역들이 생겨난다고 생각해요. 그리고 제가 그린 이미지들은 하나의 지평선을 공유하고 하나의 땅에 다 발을 딛고 있지만 그 안에서 뭐 밀물이나 썰물, 그 숲과 늪 이렇게 상반되는 그런 움직임이 공존한다고 생각을 해요. 그래서 제 작업을 보시면 중간중간에 있는 땅이나 공간이 쑥 가라앉았다가 바다가 되기도 하고 되게 평평한 그냥 회화의 평면성을 강조하기도 하고 이런 것들이 공존하는 것 그런 자체의 상황이 지도라고 생각합니다.
사실 거꾸로 생각해 보면 저희가 만든 땅은 지도에 포함될 수 없는 땅이거든요. 그래서 이제 그 여러 가지 측면을 생각하게 되는데 저희가 보통 그 집을 사거나 아파트를 사거나 건물을 살 때 대출을 받기 때문에 그 돈이 사실 제 손에 쥐어지지 않잖아요. 은행에 숫자로만 있는 돈이고 그 돈으로 땅이 아니라 허공을 사실 사는 거잖아요. 그래서 이제 그런 일종의 없는 돈으로 없는 공간을 사는 건데 거기에 다 사람들이 살고 있고 그것에 이제 어떤 이상함 같은 거를 사실은 저 땅을 만들 때 계속 생각을 했었거든요. 그래서 그 지도에 사실 있지 않는 땅을 만들면서 저희가 의기투합해 버렸다고 제가 아까 말씀드렸는데 그 중에 한 친구는 저기를 고향으로 삼겠다, 시립미술관 앞마당을 이런 얘기를 할 정도로 사실 애정이 너무 있어진 거예요, 이 땅에 대해서. 그래서 그게 또 다른 어떤 아까 순간 얘기하셨는데 그게 굉장히 그 공감을 했었는데 순간적인 어떤 정착, 잠깐의 정착 뭐 이런 걸 좀 상상하게 됩니다.
I'm going to ask one more question, but before I do that, I'm going to let you know that after that question, I'm going to open it up to you, so you can feel free to begin thinking about your questions as I ask mine. It's a kind of a broader question that I think any of you may or may not want to answer, and I just wanted to sort of probe more about the material choices in your works. You're covering almost every kind of media and material amongst you, and that on one side I mean sort of physical material or media, but we could also be speaking about the people you work with, or just the kinds of the networks you work with. And I just wanted to know if you wanted to maybe speak a little bit more about where the impulse to work with what you work with comes from.
So, if I talk about like the installation on the third floor, Fountains of Interior, it's last December when I came to Seoul, we were discussing about what kind of work I can contribute for the Biennale. I was very interested in the history of the lighting district which is, I think, a Yeoju-Sangam area, or maybe I'm not precise enough, but just Yeoju area or Jonggolo area, like this lighting district, because somehow I found it's very fascinating how somehow the notion of light has been so attached to the notion of progress, especially I think in Asian context. If you look at Korea, looking at Singapore, there's always some kind of political connotation in terms of how at a certain moment the government thinking about bring light to the society, and also this kind of project of electrification basically is a symbol of modernization. So this work itself was kind of inspired by the context of Singapore in the Southeast Asian context, but then when I was in Seoul last December, I found there's lots of resonance in terms of how a modern nation state starts thinking about what shall we do with, and how or what kind of infrastructure materiality can we introduce to society, but also use it as a presentation of the achievement of the state. In terms of resources and all the lights from the installation, from this Yeoju-Samga lighting district, and also all the flowers, which is all fake flowers, and are from the Nandaemun flower market, which I found quite fascinating because it's a mixture of fake flower and the real flower. They are in the same floor, so the fake flowers are pretty well manufactured. Like, if you don't get it close enough, you will not be able to see what the difference.
I think I like this question because I feel that nowadays, 21st century artists, it's not, to me, I think it's more important how we do things rather than what we do. So of course, each of us, we have our stories, and I work with this, I work with that. But what are the material conditions for the work to arrive to the museum, and also what are the ethics around that work? To me, that's half of the work, if not more. So I don't think anyone works alone. Even the most solitary painter will need something, or recall a memory, or bring a friend or whoever, or a book, or a piece of music, and in my case, I work with several people in my studio, or also in Argentina with different collaborators. What I try is to invest in the long term. Like, I would never want to have, when I meet someone, I want to think that this is a person that I will collaborate for the long run, and that we have a bond, and we have a relationship, and that we support each other. And that's for me the real challenge, to be an artist, and that's why I want to be an artist in this rotten world, I would say, because it doesn't. It's beyond what we make. It's how we do things, and I think I'm glad this question is posed, because it's part of the times that we're living. We're not anymore in the 20th century. It's a different time, and we need to have a different set of rules. And us artists, it's our duty to to disseminate this. How we are making things, and what are the conditions for things, and what are the ethics around the work. Yeah, that's my.
Yeah. Can I say something? Yeah, because I liked what you said. Oh yeah, because it is more important to say how these days how we do it, and I think I had the most challenging part that challenging thing that I confronted while making work in this work was having trust, because I just met them and I just said, oh yeah, let's do this piece, and I mean I spent all this time worrying about like, oh, are they gonna be really good, or like how are you gonna memorize all these lyrics? And so throughout, I mean, for about like four or 5 months, I really had to give them trust. It's almost like I have to believe myself because I cannot even believe myself. But then there's some moments that people start to build their own bonds during the practices. And I knew maybe it's working, and it worked. So.
When you are saying building trust, in your case, it's with performers that you have never met before. I think as a sculptor, I am having this trust and curiosity on material is like very important, because you are constantly making conversations with these materials that you find. In my case, through this discovery, I start to open myself up again to this world that is defined as rotten, but these evidences of wonder and mystery are always there, maybe discarded by people, but they're always coming back, and they all have very interesting narratives. So yes, so not only just the conversation between people is important, but also with material that has so many stories of people and nature. It's something that I wanted to add. Yes.
네, 안녕하세요. 이끼바위쿠르르의 김중원이라고 합니다. 아까 그 재료와의 대화라고 하신 거에 되게 공감을 많이 했는데, 저는 저 땅탑을 만드는 과정에서 정말 속으로 너무 많은 대화를 땅탑과 나누게 되었습니다. 제발 무너지지 마라, 제발 버텨라, 그리고 비가 오면 그걸 계속 씌우러 와주고. 그러니까 어떻게 보면 처음 저 흙이 여기에 왔을 때는 그냥 어떤 재료의 하나였지만, 그걸 어떤 다지고 같이 밟고 그 위에 올라서고 하면서 그 행위들을 통해서 뭔가 하나의 생명체가 된 것 같다라는 기분이 들었거든요. 그래서 그걸 계속 케어해줘야 하고, 그리고 어떨 때 그 저 탑의 그 거푸집을 떼는 순간에는 정말 간절한 마음으로 이렇게 기도를 하게 되기도 하고, 그래서 그런 지점들이 사실은 저희 작업에서도 되게 중요한 지점이지 않을까라는 생각을 하게 됐습니다.
I wanted to add something about this conversation and dialogue that I, working with people also, I think a lot of misunderstandings also, no? Because sometimes we think that we have a conversation and we understand, and most of the time we don't understand each other. And sometimes that is frustrating. But for me, in my practice this year, I realized that also that is a material that also that can be like take advantage, and like the misunderstanding and the mistake or the error, no? And for me, that's the possibility of a new shape, of a new form, this misunderstanding, not something like something negative, not something positive, no, and then something to make a point, and from that point move on. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I also wanted to add to that. It was interesting because like some of the people I worked with in order to put the show together ranges from people like the UN, the UNESCO translators at the UN, and like the archivists at the UNESCO headquarters in Paris, to a local Mudang shaman in Korea, to my grandmother who is not physically here. So the range of collaborators have been very vast. But it was interesting because like when I was in Paris, I got to actually ask the UNESCO translators. They actually write history in real time. Like, you know, all these world events that are happening. Like, for instance, the translator said, sorry, I'm really late because I had to do all the corrections about what's happening in Russia, like in Ukraine and Russia and all these things. And so I got to ask her questions like, what does it feel like to write history in real time? And she's like, no one's asked me that before. And then we're having like a very existential lunch. And just, yeah, like being able to work with different people and like to speak of materiality. I started doing these paper cutting, large-scale drawings on hanji, and I've never worked with hanji, which is Korean mulberry paper. So then I went to Chonglo and talked to all these like OG hanji people, and they were like, "This is not how you work with this paper," and like they told me all these things you're not supposed to do with it, and I did that. I actually did that because I wanted to see what would happen. But so I'm also interested in kind of playing with what's not supposed to happen, but. Yeah, so it was really interesting to connect with people and to also like ask questions that I wouldn't be able to ask otherwise. And also even seeing the people behind certain institutions. Like, when I think of these Eurocentric politics of language, that's sort of problematic, but then you talk to the person who's behind that and she's a lovely person, and then we together talk about the conflicted things that, she's felt doing that work, and she also feels like there should be more languages involved in this process. And so yeah, it was really interesting to learn from different people, not only materially, but also conceptually.
저는 사실 페인터라서 어떤 작업 과정 자체에서 누군가와 같이 일하거나 하는 게 굉장히 드문데요. 지금 얘기를 들으면서 생각해 보니까 저는 작업을 할 때 아이패드에 이제 인터넷에서 이미지를 검색해서 저장을 해두고 이제 즉각적으로 이제 필요한 것들을 이제 보고 그리는 그런 방식을 베이스로 많이 쓰는데요. 인터넷에 구글에 이제 어떤 이미지 아니면 어떤 대상의 일러스트 이렇게 검색했을 때 되게 다양한 이미지가 나오는데 그게 사실 누가 그렸는지 모르고 어떤 문화적 배경을 가진 사람이 이 뭐 사과 아니면 뭐 나무를 그렸는지 모르지만 거기에 굉장히 저는 매력을 느끼고 그거를 저장해두고 그림을 그릴 때 아무리 뭐 그대로 그린다고 해도 좀 추상화의 과정이 되겠지만 그렇게 작업을 하고 있습니다. 그래서 생각해보면 저는 전 세계에 있는 익명의 이미지를 만드는 사람들과 같이 일을 하고 있는 것 같습니다.
So we can open it up to the audience for your questions. You can feel free to ask about specific artworks or questions for the artists in general or questions for any of us. Feel free.
먼저 맵이라고 하고 왜 다른 뭐 카르토그라피 이런 단어도 있었을 텐데 쓸 수 있었을 텐데 굳이 맵이라는 단어를 선택한 이유 하나 하고요. 그다음에 작가님한테는 이 비엔날레 보면서 인상적이었던 부분은 그것을 흙을 다지면서 우리 현실과 굉장히 맞닿아 있는 어떤 문제의식 같은 거를 그걸 통해서 이렇게 일으키기도 하고 그런데 항상 저 궁금한 거는 이렇게 리서치 베이스로 뭘 하거나 어떤 프로젝트성의 작업을 할 때 그 결과물은 왜 마치 어떤 서양의 미니멀리즘 조각을 보는 듯한 그런 결과가 나오지? 미술사에서 우리가 이해할 수 있는 어딘가에 커넥션이 되는 결국은 그렇게 계보가 서는 그런 작품들이란 인상을 받았어요. 그래서 그 기도하는 마음 이런 말 했을 때도 파고다 같은 그 우리가 등산을 갈 때도 돌 하나 이렇게 쌓는 그런 한국인들은 그런 소소한 리추얼을 하지 않습니까? 근데 왜 굳이 그런 형식의 흙쌓기를 했는지 이렇게 두 개 질문이 드리고 싶습니다.
그 뭐지? 그러게요. 왜 그랬을까요? 근데 이제 저희가 한 것 중에 제일 넓은 거는 한 평이었거든요. 그러니까 일부러 한 평을 계산해서 만든 모양이었고, 그 다음에 그리고 그 한 평이 지금 여기 소공동이면 한 평에 3억 정도 되는 걸로 제가 알고 있는데, 일부러 이제 찾아봤어요. 얼마 이 정도의 땅이 이 중심부에는 얼마 정도일까? 그래서 3억 정도 되더라고요. 그리고 그 나머지 디귿자, 기역자는 사실 건물의 모양을 생각하면서 생각했던 거라, 그러니까 건물이면서 동시에 탑이면서 이런 걸 생각했던 거라 그런 모양이 될 수밖에 없었는데, 뭐 사실 저희도 이제 이걸 하고 나니까 왜 다른 모양은 없었을까 여러 가지를 고민하게 되더라고요. 그러니까 아무래도 이게 도시를 생각하고 이 도시의 어떤 직선이나 덩어리, 네모 덩어리 이런 걸 상상하다 보니까 그렇게 됐던 것 같아요. 근데 이제 사실 저 작업을 시작할 때는 그 마석가구 단지에 MDF 쓰레기 같은 게 되게 많거든요. 근데 그게 항상 차곡차곡 쌓여져가지고 흙처럼 이렇게 쌓여 있는 걸 보면서 저 흙다짐을 상상하게 됐던 거였어요. 왜냐하면 그 MDF 가루나 그 톱밥 같은 게 쌓이면서 거기에 사람들이 고추도 키우고 옥수수도 키우거든요. 심지어 흙처럼 사용해요. 근데 그거 다 쓰레기잖아요. 그래서 이제 그런 걸 쌓여있는, 오래되면서 쌓여있으면서 썩기도 하고 이런 걸 보면서 저 다짐을 생각하고 또 도시를 생각하다 보니까 사실은 네모가 됐는데, 다른 상상을 하면 좋겠다라는 의미로 좀 받아들이고 싶기도 해요. 왜냐면 저희도 작업을 할 때 뭔가 다른 세상으로 가고 싶다는 생각 항상 하거든요. 그래서 그런 지점으로 이 질문을 받으면 어떨까 합니다.
I can pick up on the question about the difference between cartography and mapping, or why I would prefer to work with one over the other in this situation. Cartography for me, there are non-Western cartographies, but even more so than maps, when we think of cartography, we think of the parceling, drawing out, and measuring of space in this more kind of Western format. The map and map making far precedes and exceeds cartography. So in this, like in the colonial period of cartography, when particularly Westerners were coming out to all of these other lands and measuring them and deciding what the borders were, almost all of the people who lived in these places already had their own maps, but they weren't necessarily cartographic ones. They were quote unquote symbolic, which were only symbolic to the West. They were real for the people who were there, whether they were spiritually based or based on the waterways or landways or memories or ancestors of those places. And I wanted to be sure to not overly highlight this idea of measurement that cartography invokes, and so allow for the looseness of the map and an understanding of how many kinds of maps have been and are, but also what that invokes. In what several of the artists said, was also kind of what I was hoping, is that for me it's very liberating to look at art or a difficult object as a map. If you already give it the generosity of thinking of it as a map, it helps you to want to understand it, and maybe helps you to try to understand it. So that's just my personal answer. Any other questions?
Yes, thank you so much for your wonderful insights to your work. And I would like to have a question about the methodology or the methods you're actually mapping with your work on this specific topic of the festival, because some of you also got invited to produce a new work, and how is this connected with other works in your artistic process?
well, in my case, the people I collaborated with, and I have done other projects with this group of people. That's one thing. As I said, it's something that I want to foster for the long run, to have these relationships practiced based. And then, for example, in this case, the works that I present, you could say they are abstract. It's abstract compositions made out of textiles on the third floor. And for me, this was, I would say, a new methodology that I wanted to engage with for this occasion. In the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years, I don't know, I've been working a lot with representation, like with different archival images, a lot of images and editing that. And I needed to, I needed to do something else. And this was a good opportunity for me the idea of a map, which is usually, it can be interpreted as a constellation of different elements, and usually you have references, and certain colors and symbols, and somehow in the back of my mind invited me to go for a different way of working with visual material. So I did these abstractions works, and I was very happy with it, because it kind of opened the door for me to continue for some time. I don't know for how long, but like to go a bit more into abstraction for now that, I haven't done it for a long, long time. So sometimes this goes like in circles, so you have like years that things are done in a certain way, and then you change and you move. Like I had several years working only with performance, the use of voice, video, the use of body, like 5, 6, 7 years doing that, and then I went into more material work. Then the pandemic came, and I couldn't see a video, or I needed to do material stuff and use my hands, because we were all the time behind the screens. So then I did a lot of textile work and material crafty work. And now after that 5 years, I'm like, oh, okay, then maybe I dare to do a video work, or I dare to work with sound again. And so I think it's also the conditions of how around the work and the possibilities around the work. And again, as I said before, I'm very much busy with that all the time in my head, how the work comes together, what's important, who takes part, how it travels here, where are the materials coming from, how are they outsourced, and sometimes, of course, it's very important what we see at the very end of that journey, but the journey in itself and the research, and this is also answering a bit the first question that was asked from the public, like the research and the whole, the path, I think it has more questions sometimes than the end result, and that the end result it's something else. Let's say.
Yeah, I can go a little bit more. I can also follow in Mercedes. And first, talking about continuity of previous work, I think I saw, because 2 of my work are not new for this Biennale, but they are recently made. They were both finished in 2022. But both of the work for me is a continuation of almost a decade-long kind of interest in terms of infrastructure, in terms of, for instance, the video work and the revolution will not be air-conditioned was basically, I think it evolved from 7 years of research into the space of Hong Kong, which I already made 3 films out of. And so there's continuity of, so I see this work as kind of in the middle of some kind of process I'm still following. I don't know what would be the next step. And in terms of like the relationship with mapping, I think the question also triggered me think about this very strange tension and ambivalence in the way of how modernity, how this kind of Western cartography, this kind of process of rendering physical space, and there's some kind of internal ambivalence, which, thinking about when we think about this Western notion of cartography, of mapping, it's about rationalize this space. You try to mark everything in a kind of scientific manner, so you can pinpoint going back to each locations. But then you think about the practice of infrastructure, this idea, the logic behind infrastructure, it's rendering the space more abstract. It's rendering space, creating new connections between different spots, and kind of shorten this space and time, this distance and time. And there's some kind of inherent logic that's contradictory. But also, I think in terms of how we experience these spaces. The spaces, first of all, it's become abstract, but in a way, somehow the abstraction can really apply to our physical sensuous experiences with space through the intensity of lighting, the skin feeling of temperature, humidity. I think there's strange, interesting tensions behind all these kind of elements within the same kind of logic, which I think, I don't know, maybe that's related with mapping itself.
¿Qué más? All right, we're done. Thank you so much. We have another panel coming at 3. You can take a brief break. Thank you to all the artists for your really great, insightful answers. Thank you for listening.